Welcome to the Toxic Parents Book Club. Today I'm going to start with presenting something to you guys that's kind of an expansion on the book. So basically the whole book is about relationships, right? And some of you have already taken the attachment styles survey, right, the quiz, to see what your style is. And all of your human relations are based on that. Every single human relation is based on your attachment style. And so Babaji and I have created something called your Sambandha Style instead of your attachment style, your relation, your Sambandha. And it's love's hidden operation system, how you operate. But we're using it now in Vedic psychology terms. And we've added more because your attachment style is a Western concept. It's a Western psychology concept. But the Vedic psychology kind of twist on it is a little deeper and a little more subtle. And so I'm going to share with you how you can see your type, your sambandha, your relation style. And we'll also update, the website on that. But just, this is, you're the first, preview, the sneak preview of this. We haven't put it on the website yet, but we worked on it and I want to share it with you, okay? So your Sambandha style has everything to do with everything, basically. How you perceive every single person in your life. How you perceive, your boss or your partner or your mother or your father. It's all coming from what happened in those first few years, of your childhood as you attached or didn't to your parents, how they treated you. But you're seeing everything through those glasses, And 3 of the styles are what we call dysfunctional. Okay, so if you are the Toshaka type, that's the anxious attachment or Sambandha style. You're completely anxious in that, and I'll go into a few details of how that looks in a person, right? So that's dysfunctional because you can never bond with the person because you're constantly anxious. Do they love me? Do they hate me? Why didn't they respond to my text, right? So that's one of them, Toshaka, the Toshaka Sambandha style, right? Then the next one is this Swarti, the Swarti style. That one's avoidant. I don't want to let you in too close to how I feel, because probably most likely in childhood, one of my parents had too many feelings and I was responsible for their feelings. So now I'm up to here with other people's feelings. So I don't want to hear another feeling, if it costs me my life. So you just shut down. You're like a box, an iron box where no other feelings can come in and you avoid. And when someone's emotional around you, you take distance. Even if it's a nice person who's expressing, hey, I care about you. It's like, ooh, that's weird. I'm allergic to that, So that's the Swarti Sambandha type. They can't bond either, so that's why it's dysfunctional. They can't get close, Then the Shunya type, that's the 3rd type of dysfunctional Sambandha type. They can't really bond either, because they're fearful and they're anxious. So they're fearful, anxious, and avoidant. So they can never win. At least avoidant, you can be 100% sure that they're going to avoid emotional intimacy. At least the anxious, you can be 100% sure they're going to be anxious around you. But the Shunya type is both. So you come close and they're like, oh God, push away. You go away and they're like, oh no, you left me, come back. Then you come close, no, push away. So that one is really tricky, right? They don't trust if you're close and they don't trust if you're far away. So those are the 3 dysfunctional Sambandha types. You can't really make a healthy relation with those, I call them like a non-stick pan, When you put something, in the West they have these non-stick pans and you put something on it and it doesn't stick. So you can't stick in a relation with one of these 3 types, Then the best type, the one and only type that's actually functional is the Swasta type. That's the securely attached person. That person is able to have empathy for you, able to, attune to you, but they don't stick on you. They're not anxious that you're going to leave them. And they don't push you away if you try to come close emotionally. They're secure in themselves. They're a self-contained unit, okay? So that's the 4 Sambandha types. And now the kind of deeper, twist, the Vedic psychology twist, which I want to add, is this, this part that you already know, but I'll just share it from the Vedic psychology point of view, is that the concept of sattva, rajas, and tamas, right? Some of you might be new to this, but in sattva is peaceful, grounded, clear, kind, empathetic. That's the only one that can be like that, truly, because they're situated in themselves. The other types, if you're rajasic, you're very passionate, you're very active, you're very energetic and excited, but you're not stable. You're not clear, so you're up and you're down, you're here and you're there. That energy's very frenetic, So that's a second type of energy, right? And then the third type is this tamasic energy, which is passive, it's dull, it's heavy, it tends towards depression. After you have a conversation with somebody who's in that mode of tamas, you also feel heavy. You're like, oh God, that was a heavy one. Where after you have a conversation with somebody in Rajas, you're like, woo, I'm excited. I don't know why, but I'm just really excited. That's because you just talked to somebody with that, like a hot chili pepper, it's exciting. And then if you talk to somebody who's in sattva, then you feel more peaceful and calm and clear about something. Maybe you feel more clear, oh, I'm glad I talked to them. Now I can see that more clearly. Okay, so those are the three types. But how do those three gunas relate to the Sambandha styles? That's interesting, right? So the Swasta type, the secure one, who you'd feel like in a secure, they do stick to the pan, but not too much, right? So that type where you can actually make a secure relationship with is in sattva. There's not a mix of the other ones, they're very less. You have to have all three to be alive. You have to have some rajas and tamas, but they're having tamas. If you're the swasta type, the tamas is for sleep for them. They're not going to act tamasic in the relationship with you, And and the rajas for them is to get things done, but it's propelling their sattva. So they're doing something for a good cause. Maybe they're feeling empathetic towards somebody in need, and then the rajas propels them to have the energy and the passion to do that. But sattva is the predominant one. Rajas is to sleep tamas is to sleep, and rajas is the energy to do the thing. But it's driven by sattva. So that's a very unique way to look at this Sambandha style, and that's why all roads lead back to, I always say sattva-size your senses, but the deeper you get into Vedic psychology, you'll realize you have to work so hard to do that every day, because if you don't, you won't even catch the concepts. You may be able to be like a parrot and say them back, but you have to look at your life. Am I living that way really? Or am I just really good at repeating it to other people? It's a big difference. The Rajasic type are going to be the ones out teaching it, but they're not living it. It doesn't match. You look and you're like, wait a minute, you're saying it, but are you doing it? So that's the Rajas type. That would be more like the Swarti. The Swarti type is avoidant, so they're not going to bond with you, but they're very smart. They can catch the information, they can teach the information, or they can lecture you about it. Maybe I'm not saying teach maybe in a public platform, but maybe you're their mother and they're like, see, I learned in the Toxic Parents book club that you're like this, So that's the avoidant type, who doesn't have a whole lot of empathy for you. They're just triggered by you, and they're rajasic, they're passionate, But Swarti isn't pure rajas. The Swarti type is rajas and tamas. So they're not seeing things clearly. That's that combo, being kind of dull and passive. And the way it looks in the Swarti type, remember, Swarti is avoidant. So that's tamas. Tamas avoids. So they're withdrawing. As soon as you come close and try to bond, ooh, that person was too nice. Ooh, let me pull back, And then the Rajasic part of the Swarti is passion. They're going to be passionate about what? Independence. Their own independence. I don't need you for anything. I don't need you for to connect about my feelings. I don't need you to validate me. I don't need you for anything. I need you to tell me how awesome I am, but I don't need you to connect by validating me with my feelings. I don't want to make that kind of connection. I just want you to tell me that I'm amazing for all my achievements, accomplishments, how I look, what I've done in the world. That's Swarti. I want you to validate that in me. But bond with me? No. There's a brick wall here. Don't bond with me emotionally. So they're passionate about being seen, and why? Because they weren't seen as a kid. They were not seen, or they were overseen. They were overly seen. It could be that too. They were always in the center. So now they're like, everybody should see me like how wonderful I am, how my parents saw me, or they were never seen, so now they're making up for it. It's one of those two for Swarti. So Swarti is that mix of this passionately independent, like I don't need any of you for my feelings, and the tamasic but isolating around, nobody can come close. I keep my fortress around me. So that's Swarti, that's Rajas and Tamas. And then we have this Toshaka type, Toshaka is anxious, right? So the Swasta is the one we all want to shoot for. That's the one functional type, Swasta. The one right underneath that is Toshaka. That's the closest to healthy, if out of the three dysfunctional ones, is the Toshaka. Because Toshaka is sattvic and rajasic. They have some sattva in them, they are empathetic. but they're anxiously empathetic. They feel for you, they kind of have a bleeding heart, but they're like, but they never can feel connected. They feel so anxious, even if you have the best connection, that you're going to leave them. So they can't relax and just be empathetic. The relaxed, empathetic one would be Swasta. But if you have Toshaka, you have part of the Swasta, like, oh, empathetic, but the anxious thing is ruining it. Because they can never just relax. So that's why it's Sattva and Rajas for this Toshaka. And then the Shunya type, last but not least, right? The Shunya type is the most difficult. Because they've got everything I told you about Toshaka, anxious, and they've got everything I told you about Swarti, avoidant. So how are you ever going to win if you're the Shunya? If somebody's trying to come close to you and you're like, oh God, push them away, avoidant. You're going to do all the Swarti things. But then you're feeling desperately lonely, So then you start feeling anxious. And then you do something to try to pull them close. The Shunyas, like the gift, have the good gift with the words. They know all the right words to say to try to, to flatter you. So then you come close and go, oh, that's a nice person. You come close. And as soon as you do that, they kick you in the head and run away. They say that they'll meet you at a certain time, they don't. They say they'll do something, they don't. They do something to sabotage it out of fear. It's like an invisible wire that gets tripped up as soon as you do something to come close. I think I gave the example last time about the inkfish. The fish in the ocean, they're like an inkfish. As soon as you come close, they're like, and they put black ink in your face. And it's like, okay. So that's Shunya, which is a mix of tamas and rajas. So whereas Swarti is rajas first, and then tamas. Shunya is tamas first, then rajas. So in other words, Shunya is really pushing away, really isolating itself at whatever cost so it can't get hurt again. But then it's feeling desperately lonely, and it wants to connect. And it does things to try to connect. It will do things to try to connect. Whereas the Swarti doesn't. Swarti is not trying to connect with you. Because they don't have the Swasta in them, they don't have that secure, obviously, and they don't have the anxious. The anxious attachment style, the anxious, Sambandha style, the relationship style, that's what's driving the Toshaka type, the anxious type, to want to connect from anxiety, But the Swarti is not having anxiety. They just want to avoid, And then the Shunya has the anxiety. I want to connect. I want to, be seen. But as soon as that happens, they're like, whoa, that's too scary. Push away. So those are the 4 attachment styles, or what we call Sambandha styles, according to Vedic psychology. Looking through the lens deeper than just saying it's an attachment style. It's actually a relation style. We're kind of putting a different angle on it of how you relate as an adult. And that's why we're looking through the lens of Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, because when you use that, you can see it more minutely. Once you understand Sattva, what it really is, and Rajas and Tamas, and then you look and go, oh, okay, I see how that's playing out. The other thing is that many of the other concepts we teach in Vedic psychology actually also fit into the Sambandha style. For example, we are all a combination of nature and nurture, right? So the nature is how we were born, our hardware, this machine that each of us are, like this body-mind complex that was built, this was conceived in a certain way, okay? So some people, when you ask your parents, how did I get conceived? They'll say, I don't know, we were drunk and we just met randomly at our friend's wedding and hooked up that night. And whoops, 9 months later, there you were. So that happens a lot, actually. It's not thought about, it's not even a marriage. It's just 2 people who got drunk and had sex. Now, how do you think the mind-body complex of that person is going to be? If they were conceived in that way with 2 drunk people who didn't love each other and just hooked up that night and had sex. Do you think they're going to be the Swasta type? And then they're carried in the womb for 9 months with all their hardware getting made up, right? And that hardware was built on the conception of 2 people who didn't even know each other, and who were in an altered state of mind, who had some kind of drugs, alcohol in their system. It's going to be a different type of person than the person who would be conceived, in a traditional, maybe Vedic way, right? Where the husband and wife got to know each other first, the families agreed, they thought this is a good match for many reasons, not just physical attraction. our families match. There's some synergy here. We get to know each other. There's no sexual relation before. And then the first night, it's through, a very sattvic way. There's a ceremony done. How do you think the baby would be conceived? Just think of the mind and the body of the baby that way. What it would be like. Swasta probably, right? And then, now that's all those first 9 months, conception plus the baby, growing in a loving environment versus not, versus another. I mean, sometimes the parents don't even know they're pregnant because that's first example, right? So the mom gets drunk at a party. She doesn't even remember what the guy's name was. Now she's out partying the next weekend, and the next weekend having sex with different guys and everything. And then 2 months later, she's like, oh, I missed my period. Could it be Johnny from the wedding 2 months? I mean, so think of how she's been operating for the first 2 months of the baby's development, not even knowing she's pregnant, out partying and drinking, having sex with other guys. How is the baby developing? The baby's not immune to that. So how you were conceived, and then that gestation period is very significant. It's a good question to ask, like probably not directly to your parents, that might be offensive to them or triggering, but like how, what was going on in my mom's life when I got conceived, for those months she carried me? What was happening in her life? That it affects how you are today, because that's your hardware. Then you think, okay, now so that's the nature, right? Now you think, okay, now my software. What was my software that got put into me? That's the years of being a child. That's the software that got put into you. Then you learned kind of what's right and what's wrong, what the family values are. You learned what love is by how your parents loved you, or didn't. Anyway, you still think it's love, right? So you learned all of these things. Your software got programmed into you. That's the nurture piece. In Vedic psychology terms, we would say the nurture is how you were parented. And there's a whole lot we have to say. That's why we chose this book, Toxic Parenting. There's a whole lot that can go wrong with your software. So you imagine all of these stories, I just want to put this as a foundation. I just wanted to say all this first, to give you the Vedic psychology lens of when we're looking at all these stories. We did Michael last week, right? These stories, looking at through the Vedic psychology lens, what type do you think he was? What Sambandha type do you think he was? Probably Toshaka, right? He was very anxious, and probably codependent, So that's interesting. And then think, well, then you look at the mother and look at the father and look at how he was treated even now, how he is being treated now. So how he must have probably been treated, how he was conceived. Do you think they were thinking, let's plan to have a child? Because why? We've created a very safe, healthy relationship between us. We've created a nice home. We're balanced. We're happy. We're healthy. Let's bring another person into this life with us to continue with our, wonderful life we're having. That is a very rare set of parents. That's not how it usually goes, right? So then you look, and it's not a surprise how Michael turned out with the hardware he got by how he's probably conceived, and then the software he got. So he got completely programmed to be Toshaka, anxious, anxiously attached, and still, do you think the avoidant type would fly across the country to the parents' wedding and leave their partner? Hell no. Neither would the securely attached. The Swasta wouldn't do that either, because they're secure in themselves. They don't need their parents' validation. The avoidant tries to avoid. That's way too emotionally intimate to do that, right? So they would never do it. So then that leaves two types. Either Toshaka, the anxiously attached, or the Shunya type, who's anxious and avoidant. So he's got to be down to one of those two. We can't say for sure, but definitely not the Swasta and definitely not the Swarti. So that's what I'm saying, is you can start analyzing these case studies that we talk about through the Vedic psychology lens, and then it helps you start seeing yourself like that. It helps you start seeing other people in a way that's a little more, I don't know what to say, but mechanical, in a way that you can really pick it apart and analyze it, instead of just saying, Michael was screwed up or something. How could he do that? It gives us some language to use around it, So those are the styles, and then some characteristics of the Toshaka style. I'm just going to read a few of the core beliefs, okay? So Toshaka, remember, is the anxious Sambandha style, right? And just think how this relates to our friend Michael. Just see if this relates, right? If we're going to peg him as anxious. I'm only lovable when I'm what? Useful. I'm only lovable when I'm useful. I have nothing of worth on my own, just as a person. Only when I can be useful to mom or dad, which is what triggered him to go all the way across the country. Because I can be useful. I can be a good boy, you know. I perform to belong, and I need you to be okay. Do you see how the sentence doesn't say, I need to be okay? That's not even in the equation. Just as long as you're okay. You're okay, then I'm okay, which is not, that doesn't work that way. That's why codependents get sick, you know? They can't self-soothe. If the other person that they're in relation with is triggered, is angry at them, for example, like the parents for not coming to the wedding anniversary, he won't be able to sleep. He'll be up at 2 a.m. stressing out until he thinks that his parents are okay with him. And the only way that's going to happen is if he books the flight. So he'll be up at 2 a.m. spending $2,000 on a flight that he didn't even research, just so he can write the message to them and go, I booked the flight, I'm coming. And then they're going to go, yay, you're coming. And he's going, oh, phew. But then the wife's like, I'm pissed at you, you're leaving me? He's like, oh no, now I created another problem. Now she's mad at me. So being this Toshaka type is completely anxiety ridden all the time. They can never really win, you know? Okay, so then the avoidant, right? The avoidant Sambandha Style, our friend Swarti, right? So here's some core beliefs of Swarti. See if you can relate to this. I can only rely on myself. Being vulnerable makes me what? Being vulnerable makes me weak. Only, Swarti is strong and independent. That's my main thing. Independence, right? I don't need anybody. So if I'm vulnerable, meaning if I express my feelings, I express to you that I'm scared or that I don't know something, that's weak. They'll never do that. They can never be wrong. That's why they're so triggered if you say bad and wrong and you don't get it. They can't take criticism at all, the Swarti types. The intimacy, what does it mean to them? This is interesting. Intimacy to the Swarti type means they feel stuck and trapped. They feel trapped. Emotional intimacy makes them feel trapped. They don't like that. It feels, any kind of emotional intimacy, it feels too close and the loss of their freedom. You know? And then our friend, the Shunya type. Okay? So Shunya, remember, is both. That's why it's called, you know, in traditional Western psychology, it's called disorganized. It's disorganized because they're not one or the other. Swarti is very clear. Avoid emotional intimacy. And this other type, Toshaka, very clear. Completely anxious about it. Always wanting to, you know, you feel like they're clingy. You know, Velcro? It's like... And Swarti doesn't like it. You know, that's why they're the magnetic pair. You know, the Swarti is always trying to get you off, and the anxious type is always trying. And they go together. They go together. So the anxious type, this Toshaka, you know, that's what they don't trust the relation at all. And of course, they're attracted to the one who will never come out, who will never bond with them, the Swarti type. So for the Shunya type, they've got both of that going on, both of those attachment styles. So for this type, listen to their 3 core beliefs, okay? Shunya, people I love will leave me. People I love will leave me. This is the anxious part of them. People I love will leave me. So as soon as I get close, that person's going to leave me. That is what they believe at their core, whether they're aware of it or not. Remember, these are all samskaras in the unconscious mind. They're probably not aware of it, but that's what's driving them to act in that way. So when you feel that anybody's being clingy with you, clingy, or you're being clingy, or like you're like, why didn't they respond back? That's obviously not the avoidant one, and it's certainly not the securely attached one. Then you can know that you have some of this type in you, this Toshaka, this anxious attachment style, you know? And then another one for the Shunya is, but I can't trust anybody, right? I can't trust anyone. So people I love will leave me. So that means that you don't want people to leave you, right? That's what it means. But then meanwhile, when you're with them, you can't trust them. And then the third one is, I don't know who I am. So the Shunya doesn't know who they are. They feel empty inside. They feel invisible. They feel hollow. And they feel desperately lonely. There's nothing that can fill that up. That's how they feel. Even when they're with a room of people that they know, they feel lonely. Because to not feel lonely, you have to connect with someone. And they have blocked themselves on both sides. You know? You come close, I kick you, but I want you. You come close. And then and the receiving end of the Shunya type, if you're not the Shunya, but you're Swasta, is exhausting. It's exhausting because you're trying to bond with them. Swasta, you see that they're hurt and you're trying to bond with them, but they kick you in the face and poke you in the eye, and so then you're like, oh, okay, wait a minute, I'm still trying, Then they kick in the other eye and you're like, okay, wait a minute. You try to hug them and they spit on you, and kick you in the face, and then you're like, okay, I let you go. And they're like, you let me go? How could you let me go? This is my biggest fear ever. And it's like, so that's why it's called a disorganized style. It's on the receiving end, it's not clear. They're not clear. That's why there's a lot of tamas there, confusion, And that's why in the receiving end, it's exhausting to be in a relationship with the Shunya type. Because for you, there's no connection either way. And then you're also always getting blamed by them, because that's also what tamas is very good at. Not seeing themselves and blaming. And then at the end of the day, they go, I'm so lonely. I can't figure out why. Why did this person do this to me? So that's Shunya. In tamas, you don't have insight into how you've affected other people. So you come to the therapy and you have a list of all the people who did you wrong. And it's like, okay, well, do you think you might have something to do with it? No, not me. I just feel lonely, So this is the Shunya type, and that's why it's the hardest one to work with, is this organized attachment. You have to get ground somewhere, but you don't know where, to do it. So that's the most painful dance of all. It feels like a very chaotic relationship if you're in a relationship with the Shunya type, and it feels like you're walking on eggshells. It's like no matter what I do, this person's going to be upset. That's how it feels. And you could be doing it. You could not realize that you're Shunya, and you could think the other person's Shunya. I'm, of course, not Shunya. The other person's doing that to me. It's like, okay, take a look at your history. Have you felt like chaotic and unsafe and relationships and empty and lonely? Then it's probably you, because it can't be that every single person you pick is like that. I mean, you'd have a better chance of winning the lottery. So that's one way to see what you are, because like I said, the surveys that we've created, they're based on you doing a good self-assessment. So how's Shunya going to do a good self-assessment? They're in tamas. How's Swarti going to do a good self-assessment? They're in rajas and so that's what I'm saying. It's very hard to see yourself. So one idea, if you want to go deep into this work, is that's fine. Take the survey, but then work with your therapist and say, here's how I see myself. Can we go through the survey together? Pull it up and go through the questions and say, how do you see me? This is what I would do in this situation. Do you see that I'm like that? Also do it with a friend or somebody else who's also in therapy. Both of you do it, and then meet and then give each other the direct feedback. That can help, because this is not a small task to understand and see yourself. And what we've given is the foundation. It's the core foundation of who you are and how you think about every interaction, how you feel about every interaction. And interaction, I mean relationship. It's the core. So if you want to go live in a cave for the rest of your life, just forget about this. You don't need it. But any human relation that you have, this is what's driving you, one of these four. So that's why I chose to pick this to explain today, because it's at the base of all the toxic parenting things we've been doing. It's the foundation of everything, and that's what Vedic psychology does. It goes to the root, So now let me tell you about our friend Swasta, okay? So she's the one who is secure. She's situated in herself. She had parents who attuned to her, especially mother. It's mother's job to attune to her emotions. That means mother herself was not overly emotional. Mother had to be Swasta herself, otherwise it's not going to work. Now go all the way back to conception. Now you're 30, now you're 40, now you're 50, but think of how young your mom was when you were conceived. Did she have it all together? Was she completely sattva, grounded, Swasta? Or was she different? Because sometimes people say, my parents are really good now. I mean, it was bad then, but she's good. Yeah, but you, the machine of you, was built at the time that she conceived you and carried you for those 9 months. So how was she then? What was she like then? At conception and at gestation, those 9 months or 10 months, So you go back and look at that and say, okay, was she in this Swasta state? Probably not, is my guess. So then she's in one of those other three. And how did that affect your machinery, how you got made? Now, a lot of you guys have been doing a lot of personal work. So you probably are not exactly how you were born, You see yourself, you're working on yourself. So I'm not trying to make it doom and gloom. I'm just trying to help you look at your history. How did you get built that way? So you can get out of it. You know, so you can go, I don't want that thing that she gave me or that he gave me or whatever was going. Maybe your mother got pregnant at the time of a war. Maybe she had a baby that died right before you, and she was grieving, and you were born. Maybe she had a baby that died after you were born. Or there's so many things that were going on with the mother, the mental state of the mother, and it wasn't all just about you, you know, and that contributes to how you were. So that's why I'm trying to just ramp up to say Swasta style is very, very rare for somebody to be Swasta. Okay, so that means that they're sattvic, and their hardware and their software are completely aligned. How they were when they were, that whole beginning part was your hardware when you were conceived, and that gestation period is the hardware. Then all the software that got put into you by loving Swasta type of parents also had to happen. You know? And so if all that was perfectly well, then you're going to be Swasta type. Your parents were clear, authoritative, precise and concise. They didn't overdo it, spoiling you. They didn't underdo it and ignore you. They didn't have too many of their own feelings getting involved, or other projects that they're involved with. They were focused on you, but not too much. I mean, it's a real perfect, that's why I'm saying, like, we should really have a parenting school down the line, right? Because there's a lot that has to happen to create a Swasta type of Sambandha. So in terms of their core beliefs, if you're Swasta type, it would be that people are doing their best. This is so important, because oftentimes we get triggered by people. It probably happens for most of us on a daily basis, right? That people are triggering us. Why is that? Why would somebody trigger you so much? Why? Because you're not Swasta. If you're in Swasta, you automatically, like your mantra without even thinking, without somebody having to tell you in a class or something, people are doing their best. Why? Because you don't need them to do better than that. Why? Because you're situated in yourself, you're happy, you're grounded, you're peaceful, you're absorbed in your work, you know, so you don't need somebody to, if somebody acts like a jerk, it's like, oh, they must have had a hard day, they must have had a hard life, they must have had a hard childhood, whatever, but they're doing their best. And that's it. You don't overanalyze, it's just like, oh, they're doing their best, you know. Now, would you become their best friend and hang out with them? Probably not. But you're not going to hate them. You're going to see that they didn't probably have such a good fortune as you for the childhood that you had, you know. And you can hold space for what we'd say, like, for their humanity, to see that they're flawed, but you don't not take it personally. It's just like they have some flaws, and probably they got some more rajas and tamas than you do. And that's it. It's not a personal thing. You know, the second thing, a core belief of the Swasta type, is that I can handle whatever comes. You know? There's nothing so overwhelming or so challenging that I can't handle it. Why? Because in your childhood, your parents taught you that. Meaning, as a kid, you couldn't handle whatever comes, but they supported you. So you had that constant, consistent, loving support and understanding. So by the time you're 18, you feel like you can handle anything. They've helped you grow up and learn your limitations then, and then what is possible. They don't spoil you and make you think that you're, you know, a superhero, and they don't trash you all the time and criticize you and make you feel like there's something wrong with you, you know. So that's another one. Life is going to bring challenges and joys, but you have the inner resources to support yourself, and you can do it. You don't need other people, and you're not going to lose yourself in whatever challenge is, whatever the challenge is. And the third kind of core belief of our friend Swasta, right, of this secure in relationship type, is I know who I am. So remember, Shunya has no idea who they are. And with the Shunya type, it will change 10 times in a day. It can change so many times in one day, just depending on the conversation they just have with somebody, the interaction with somebody, that they think they're great. I'm great, I'm horrible, I'm this, I'm that, because they're not situated in themselves at all. That's Shunya, you know. With a very sharp contrast is Swasta. I don't care what anybody says. I don't care if you hate me. I don't care if you love me. That's your stuff going on, but for me, I know who I am. I'm solid. I'm grounded in myself. I like myself. I'm confident in myself. And I have my own worth regardless of what any other person thinks of me. So you see, Swasta is quite different. It's quite different. You know, each of the other parts has a part missing at least, you know, one part. So, you know, understanding all of this is very important. And your software, all those pieces that get put into you, are some of the other parts of Vedic psychology that we've already talked about somewhat, but for example, your swabhava, you know? So when you find out what is your type, you know, that's nurtured very much by your parents. They might see that you come in and you have a natural, you know, a lot of people have something they're naturally good at. So we could use a simple one. Some people are really good at music. They just pick up the flute and want to start playing it, or the violin or something, right? If they're naturally good at that. So that's wonderful. And the parents, if they're the Swasta type, if they're secure and they're sattvic, they'll see that in you. And they'll take you to music lessons, and they'll nurture that in you. They'll go and support you and when you're doing that, and they'll provide the resources necessary to help you grow in that, you know? So that's how the swabhava gets developed in the child. And that's another unique part of Vedic psychology, is that it's not just sattva, rajas, tamas and the 4 types, but there's also many other pieces to the software that we can get into. But one of them I've talked about before is your swabhava. That's a really important part of who you are. And the parents, if they're not swasta, guess what? How is it possible? And so that's why so many people have no idea what their swabhava is. Even if they've been told, they're like, well, I'm not sure if it's that, it could be this, or it could be that. Or they're 100% sure of what it is and it's dead wrong. They're like, oh, I know my swabhava, and they're off, like they're in the weeds, you know, and they think this is me, this is it, because they didn't have a father who was attuned to them and helped them see it. So then they've got to figure it out themselves, and they can't. So what they do is they watch somebody who's had some success and they just try to copy them. So swabhava sometimes is not easy to figure out, because once again, we have a swabhava survey, but think about how it's being, who's taking it? The person whose mind is in rajas and tamas. So mostly, you know, so they're not going to see it clearly, and they're going to write what they want or how they want to be. And they're like, oh, that's me. You know, so that's also something I would advise, if you're not sure, or even if you're 100% sure, go talk to a professional and be sure. You know, because the worst thing ever is to do someone else's swabhava. And it happens a lot. And then you can't figure out why you're not feeling as happy as that other person who really is in their swabhava. You can't figure it out. And then you're jealous of them. That one who really is actually situated in their swabhava, you're jealous of them, you try to compete with them. You don't even feel good around them, because they're actually lighting up in their swabhava. They're hooked up to their swabhava, but you're not. But you think you are, because it's the closest thing to something you might like, but it's probably not it, you know? So that's a big piece also of Vedic psychology, understanding your hardware and your software very clearly. Who are you and how did you get there? So we can highlight who you are and pump that up. And the parts that aren't you, that got put into you, like faulty, toxic, you know, programming, we want to get that out. And that's why we're reading this book. But today I wanted to give more of a, you know, not just reading, but give an overview more of the foundation of what this whole book's about from a Vedic psychology point of view. So do you guys have any questions? Vilas?
Could you speak about what are key steps to evolve towards being a swasta?
The first thing is to get to know what you are now. You have to see yourself very clearly first. And that's not a small project. So it's a good question. What are the key steps to become swasta? But you have to see where you're standing. Are you standing in Vrindavan, or are you in Boston? Most people think they're in Boston, but they're in Vrindavan. I mean, it's that far off. So you have to see very clearly. Like I said, most people think their mind type is sattva and they're swasta. And then if they don't get that, they get upset. You know, so it's like, see very clearly where I'm standing. What is my swabhava? What's my mind type? What's my body type? What are my likes and dislikes? You've got to see that whole map clearly. What are my samskaras? What are my parenting types? All those different assessments we've made, map that out clearly, and then work with a professional really to be crystal clear on all that. Then you can start saying, which piece do I want to work on first? But mostly what happens is we don't see that clearly, and we're already trying to work on something just because we're triggered of discomfort. Just say you're already in a marriage. Now you're trying to work that out. And it's like, well, wait a minute, but who are you? I don't know. But we're having problems, so we're trying to work that out. It's like, let's figure out even, I don't know how you got to that marriage point, but let's figure out who you are. What's your mind type? Do you even match with that person? Probably not. You know, so that's why I'm saying most people come to therapy because they have a problem, instead of like, I've never had somebody come and say, I don't know who I am. Can you help me? Never. It's always like, some problem, which is the symptom, which is like a superficial thing. So we got to go all the way to the root. So that's the first step, to get to Swasta, see who you are with the help of a professional, a trained eye who can really help you see more clearly that, and then you can make a plan on how to work on the different parts. Jaya?
Yes, I think you already replied most of the question, because no one is completely, let's say, Shunya or completely Toshaka.
Yeah.
So we recognize all this in us.
Yeah.
Minimum
Yes.
and maximum. So I think this is difficult, and that's why we indeed need a therapist or
Someone
professional who
yeah.
can guide us more into something.
Yeah, because nobody's 100% any of that, you're right.
Exactly, yeah.
It's just what your predominant one, and predominant is kind of like your general, how you're going to respond generally. Or do you generally do the Shunya thing? And you can see, nobody here is 3. We're all adults, so you can look at your history and go, how did I respond in that relationship? Oops, I did that one again. So then that's how you see your pattern. And that's why we made the survey. We're not just like, are you this or that? We don't ask characteristics, we give situations for you to see how you'd respond, and then that's how it gives the, and so, yeah, nobody's just 100%.
And we are also different in different circumstances.
Yeah.
Like here in an ashram, we
Yeah.
are one way. If we would live in an office, for example, we are another person.
Yeah, that's true.
So that makes it all very difficult.
It makes it difficult. It's not so easy. That's why it's like the more you study it and map it out, and then you figure out, you know what, at the ashram I'm fine, I don't have issues, but at the workplace, oh my God, so then you figure out where the problem area is also. That's another thing too. You map everything out and you see where, first, who am I? And then where is the problem area? Just like you bring the car to the mechanic. If the windshield wipers are fine and the tires are fine, but there's an oil problem, but first you've got to check the whole thing. Or getting a body checkup, check the whole thing, and then when you find the faulty area, we work on that. Because it's true, if you show up in different ways in different situations, that's fine, as long as there's no problem. But where the problem is, then we go, let's work on that. Good? Okay. Kamala.
Yeah. You speak about the Gunas, no? Related to the different attachment style. And in Toshaka, you say that is anxious, and but is also is sattvic and raja. You say, no?
Yeah.
So first sattvic, but I cannot really figure out how sattvic. What is the sattvic component in these characteristics? Because you say that okay, it's empathetic, but then it ruins it. Destroys this empathy by being fearful and
Anxious.
Anxious.
Yeah. So the empathy is sattvic, but it's not purely empathetic. So Swasta is purely empathetic. It's not anxious, so it's pure. So then when it gets diluted down, now the anxiety is mixed in with it. So it's not that it's never empathetic. It's quite empathetic. It cares about other people. It's attuned to other people, but the anxiety comes in and ruins it. In other words, oh, you hurt your arm. Let me help you. They'll genuinely do that, Toshaka. They're people pleasers, So they're wired to help you. And when they heal from that and they become Swasta, they do all that same stuff. It's just that the anxiety is gone.
Okay.
So, but if you're Toshaka and you do it, then you're going to help with the arm, but then you're going to be like, did I stay too long? It looked like she was kind of annoyed in her face that I stayed too long, or maybe I should check on her again, or I texted her and asked her how her arm was, but she didn't respond back. Is she mad at me? I don't know. So it's neurotic.
Yeah.
But the empathy won't go. As they improve and get out of the Toshaka-ness, they'll be empathy pure.
Okay.
And the anxiety goes.
Thank you.
Okay. Mohini?
Yes, my question is why to work on all this? Because in the Bhagavatam, we recently also heard that shloka cited by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. He says, you can overcome tamas by cultivating rajas, you can overcome by cultivating sattva, and all this you can overcome by surrendering to Guru. So why to make all this hard work and go through the svabhava and attachment style when you can surrender to Guru?
That's true. Do it. Just do it.
Or
Forget all this stuff. Just surrender to Guru and let me know how it goes. Give us some pointers on how to do that. Because I would really not, I would believe me, it's not that much fun for me to create all these surveys and teach all this stuff. I would rather we all just say, hey, you know what, forget it, let's just surrender to Guru.
Or how does this work, this surrender to Guru, that it replaces the whole work?
Yeah,
or how to
it does.
bring both together?
You apply it in your life and let me know. Try it. Try to not do it and surrender to Guru and let me know how it goes, and then try to do it and see if you get any closer. It's Vedic psychology is a very personal, practical work. There's philosophy, but then it's personal and practical. So each person will take it in a different way. And if you have some idea like, this seems like a lot of hard work, how about I just surrender to Guru? Maybe that's the impetus right there to surrender to Guru. Then you don't need to do all the hard work. Could be. That's why I don't want to say some definitive answer. Try it. And then if you're like, oh shoot, it's not working. Okay, maybe I should try one of those things I heard in Vedic psychology, see if it works. But each person has to apply it to themselves and see how it's helpful or not, Some people don't need Vedic psychology. There's a lot of people who are not in these classes because they don't need it. They're already surrendered to the Guru, And maybe they don't have a goal of surrendering to the Guru. Maybe they have a different goal and they don't need Vedic psychology. So it's very personal choice. And then you see what sticks for you and what doesn't. But you got to try it. Then you'll know, that I needed that. That helped me. Or, oops, that's not working. Thank you, Mohini. Did anyone else have a question? Nanchi?
Julia has a question.
Okay.
She says, when mother doesn't remember well the pregnancy period, how can the child figure out her mind from own triggers and emotions?
What I said was don't ask your mother. I don't think it's a good idea, first of all. That's gonna probably trigger your mother, and it'll feel threatening. Like, what are you saying? I'm not a good mother? Why do you want to know my mind state when you have me? Are you gonna blame me for something? So, or even if not, it's a little bit personal, and so if you don't know, you can try to guess. You can try to think, okay, was she 18? Or was she 35? Or was it an accident? Was it planned? Was she in love with my father? Was she stable? Was she also trying to work? Was she fill in the blank? You probably know something about your mother, unless you're adopted, you might not know. But even that, the fact that you went up for adoption, did your mother not even want you? Some people, mother even tried to abort them. Some mothers even tried to abort the baby and it didn't work. I mean, how is that going to turn out? Some mothers didn't want the baby and got rid of it as soon as they could. Some mothers were so desperate for a baby, they're so happy. So you can put together the pieces, without asking. And then what was the other part of the question?
She was saying that, was it like she can know it by her own triggers or emotions?
That's probably the software. The software, yeah, you can know whatever you're triggered by is how probably you were treated by mother and father in childhood. But the hardware of your general makeup, is also from how your mother, her mental makeup, But the main point is you don't have to pinpoint exactly what your mother went through. You can put the points together, because just say you're triggered. It doesn't necessarily mean that now you have to be like, well, it's because my mom was this and that and the other. If you're triggered, that's enough to know, okay, I'm triggered, how can I manage it? My mind's not in sattva, how can I get it in sattva? And then if you need to figure out the story, you work with the therapist, and they'll ask the right questions, Because I gave a lot of information today, and if you're not working with a professional, you can go off in the weeds again. You can be probably the wrong swabhava, thinking you're the wrong mind type, the wrong body type, and asking the wrong questions, and you're not going to get very far. So I would say if you have questions, and if you're working with the therapist, bring them to the therapist. Personal questions like that, and let the professional guide you.
Bharat has a question.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a type of professional we should ask of help? Internal family systems.
You can. Anything else? What do you guys think? Do you understand the Sambandha Style better now? When you hear them explain, sometimes you take the survey and you're like, oh, I'm that, okay, next. But when you hear it more in depth, then you're like, oh. Vilas?
now that you pointed out the influence of the Gunas, Rajas, Sattva, Tamas, on these Sambandha styles, it seems that, is it true that if I strengthen my Sattva and I'm a Shunya type, for example, then naturally the Shunya tendencies will get lower?
Yeah. Because Sattva is going to give you clarity. So you're going to see, oh shoot, I'm doing a Shunya thing over there. It's going to give you clarity and it's going to make you stop doing some of that stuff. Otherwise it's not Sattva. But see, if you're Shunya, you're mostly Tamas first. So you've got to get yourself more into Rajas. You've got to eat some chili peppers and do some jogging or things to get more into Rajas first before you can see clearly, you know. So you'll start doing more Rajasic type of thing. And then eventually you can move yourself, especially if you're consciously doing it with the help of somebody on the outside who's going, yep, you're moving, I see, oh, that's Raja, you're going. Okay, now you can make a plan to get there. You know, but oftentimes people, if they're in tamas, they think they're in sattva, first of all, or second of all, they try to skip the rajas thing. And then they just want to do, but you can't. You have to go through that. You got to shake it all up, you know. And then when you get into sattva, then you can see more clearly, and then the shunya characteristics will go away because you're going to be seeing, whoa, you know. And the help of a therapist, you know, ideally your therapist is in sattva so they can help you see it. They're clear and they can make ding, that's that, that's, you know, and they can do it in a compassionate way so you're not defensive or triggered, you know, and then that's how you can also get out of it. You yourself are probably not going to be in sattva, but the therapist is helping you clear the way and say, forget about that, you don't need to just stay focused, let's go that way to, you know, and then they'll keep putting the sattvic lens on it to show you. If you trust your therapist, then that's how you can progress, because then you can go, oh, okay, this person keeps showing me and keeps helping me stay clear. That's also how you get out of it.
Yeah, I just want to thank you because basically I realize now by this presentation that this swasta not only is a goal and is a rare thing to be situated in that type of attachment style and personality, and has become very more broad, more clear. And also I found that how Swasta is thinking about himself, and how Shunya is thinking about himself, and how Toshaka is thinking about himself. So it's like, it's a very stimulating way to make self-assessment basically, and see where we are. And then because this Swasta, he knows he's situated in himself. He doesn't need anybody. He's very balanced, but it's not that he's not disturbed.
No.
Nothing can disturb him, no?
Yeah.
And in the other three types, there is always something which brings you down, or it's like a stormy, unclear situation, and not stable, and maybe it goes a little bit and then again stumbles. Yeah. So it's really like a character building, and it's like amazing. Yeah. I found it really wonderful.
And it also helps when you see the other three types, those kind of dysfunctional types, you know, those three types are inherently selfish. How can you really have empathy and really care for another person? Even the Toshaka, it's like a sliver, but the anxiety sabotages it, you know. So really those three types are too triggered to really care about somebody else. So if you're one of those three types and you're like, no, but I'm empathetic, if you really look at why you're doing it, it's to pacify your insecurity. If you're Toshaka, you're the people pleaser. So I'm going to help you so you'll love me, or you won't be mad at me, you know. And if you're each one is doing their dance, we could call it, just to kind of put a soothing, healing balm on their wounded part, that's all. But it looks not like that when it's happening. Why? Because we learned from a really young age how to do this dance. And we can fool the best of them. But when you see the swasta, you know, like you said, they're not only are they not triggered, are they stable, but they're actually giving back. And they're not trying to get something. The other three are trying to get something. But the swasta is actually giving for the sake of giving because they're happy. And they're fulfilled, and they don't need you to help me not be anxious, or to, you know, you to leave me alone, or to tell me how great I am, or to do both, or whatever. Like, they're not triggered, they're stable, but they're the only one who can truly give. You know? The other ones are giving with the string attached, and we often don't see it. And that's why I've said before with these toxic parents, all those relationships you're seeing, the parents are not Swasta. That's why they're toxic. So what are they going to create? Swasta kids? No, you know? So then that dance is always going on. But that's why we made this kind of, that's why I thought today if we can present this, you can at least see what you're shooting for, where you stand and then what you're shooting for. And with the Vedic psychology tools we have, it's possible. You know? That's why Babaji created this whole field, because what he's seen with devotees is that it's very hard to show up Swasta. And if you're not in that state, how are you going to be able to implement bhakti other than as the state that you're in? You know, so you'll be sabotaging yourself. But not everybody takes to it, and that's also okay. It's just an option if you want to try it, you know. But like Mohini was saying, you know, why not just surrender? That would be wonderful, you know, if you can do that. That would be the first choice. Probably the Swasta type's doing that, right? But everyone else, it's going to be too hard to do that. So we have these extra tools to try. Okay? Anything else? No? Anything, Nayan Shri, Vilas, Jaya, Kamala? Good? Nayan Shri?
Yeah, I would say that it's just amazing how you elaborated and also put the point of how it is how much it is important to know your Subhava, because oftentimes we get to the therapist about what are our daily triggers to discuss that instead of actually going to the root problem and find out that, okay, I am like this, of course I'm going to behave like this and something like this. So this class has been very much, how to say, inspiring to go deeper into what is the Subhava and how I am in my relationship with the therapist, so that we can be more clear.
Good.
So I really want to thank you that
My pleasure.
did this presentation.
The therapist also sees your strengths. It's not that they're just going to pick you apart, you know. They're going to say, because you're going to come in probably not seeing a lot of your good qualities. So the therapist is going to say, hey, you know, you may not be that Swabhava, but you're amazing at that. You're really, really good at that. And you might not see it. You might have a complete blind spot to that. Why? Because your father didn't see it. So now you're like grasping for straws. This is my Swabhava, thinking that you've found it. But you're going in your own, you know, probably one of the types of, you know, the Sambandha types that relation styles that you can't see it clearly. You're seeing through tamasic or rajasic lenses, you can't see yourself clearly. So the therapist is not there to just criticize you. That's another common thing, like they're going to tell me everything I did bad or wrong. No, they're going to point out your strengths when you can't see them. They're going to lift you up and help you really shine. Because they've ideally figured that out themselves. If they haven't, then it's just a philosophy. But if they figured it out and you see them shining, you see them doing their thing, then they have gone that path already and they're going to help you along the path. Just kind of adjust a little and say, well, it might not be that, think about this, you know, and help you really supercharge yourself, you know, hook up with your strength. Were you going to say something, Kamala?
Just want to thank you very much for this class. Was really amazing. And also what is coming up very clearly that because of tamas and rajas that we can't see exactly what we have summarized now, that's why it's completely necessary to have somebody to help, and in this case a therapist.
Yeah, so you can see.
Yeah, so that we can learn and see.
This is all Babaji's knowledge, you know, that he's giving to us. Like many gifts to be able to see ourselves clear that he's giving. We just have to try to apply it, you know. And once we do, then once you get hooked up with your Swabhava, it's very difficult to have those other feelings, you know. Of course you're going to connect with people. Of course you're not going to be jealous, because what are you going to be jealous of? You're situated in yourself. You're completely absorbed in what you're doing, because that's what you were born to do, you know. Okay, we better wrap up. So thank you guys.